Hey there, Christophe from The French Herbal. I'm on a hike today, I'm a little sweaty, but I'd like to introduce a new series that I call Herbal Applied Research News. It's a format that I've been doing in French for several years now, and my French audience loves it. I hope you will appreciate it too. Don't hesitate to let me know in the comments. When you look at different sources to build your knowledge about herbs and medicinal plants, you can roughly divide into three categories. Number one, you have tradition, meaning all the knowledge passed down to us by our ancestors, usually in the form of classic books. Number two, data from experience and the experience of other practitioners around the world. And we would call that empirical data, sometimes clinical data. And number three, scientific research. And to me, those three sources are all important. Regarding research, today there are countries and research centers doing very interesting studies to bring medicinal plants back into the spotlight. And very often, mind you, those studies are criticized by mainstream medical research because, well, the number of people involved, what we would call the sample size, is always too small, and the study design is never good enough, etc., etc. Fine, let's hear the criticism, it's fine, but also let's be open to new data from this research and see if that can lead us into new directions. Me, I try to keep an eye on new studies on medicinal plants on a regular basis, so I read a lot of them, and then I try to see if the information is practical or not. And when I find research worth sharing, well, I will present it here. That's the goal of this series. Before we start, I remind you that I'm not a doctor, I'm not a pharmacist, I'm not a healthcare professional, and this episode is not a substitute for medical advice. Also, I'm not a professional researcher, so I will do my best to interpret the studies, but I have my limitations too, right? I am first and foremost a practitioner. Okay, that being said, let's get started. So today we'll talk about two studies, one on the leaves of milk thistle, yeah, not the seeds, you heard me right, the leaves, and one on sumac fruit powder for non-alcoholic steatohepatitis, also called NASH or NAFLD for non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. The first study that caught my attention is on milk thistle. And this study was sent to me by one of my French readers. It's not that recent, it's from 2012, but I found it fascinating. And since I like math, I will share with you a few calculations to illustrate the study, and I promise I'll keep it simple. And the takeaway you'll see is worth it. So you probably already know milk thistle. I'm hoping that the plant, it's one of the best herbs for healing liver inflammation and liver damage. And I will make an episode dedicated to this plant all in due time. And now, I'm a big believer in the whole plant as a remedy, not just a few active isolated constituents. But for milk thistle, we have very good data on what we call silymarin. It's one name, it sounds like one constituent, but it's actually a bunch of lignin type constituents. Silymarin is precious because it seems to protect the liver, to help the organ repair itself. It helps it make glutathione, which is a very powerful antioxidant. It works great as long as the liver is not in an advanced stage of damage and fibrosis. Normally we use the seeds, and collecting the seeds, which are trapped into that very spiky casing, well, it's darn unpleasant, and I could use stronger expletives. You inevitably end up getting stabbed and punctured. It's not fun at all. And the reason we focus on the seeds is that the silymarin is believed to be concentrated in the outer layer, in the outer coating of the seeds. Well, that's what we thought until now, because this study offers a new perspective. In the study, the researchers compared the silymarin content of the seeds with that of the leaves. And here's what they found, right? They analyzed the leaves at 3 stages of growth, and the plants were grown in Egypt. First stage before flowering, second stage at full bloom, and by the way, milk thistle makes beautiful purple flowers encased in very spiky bracts. And number 3, at seed formation, which means when the seeds are available on the plant. And the stage that produced the highest amount of silymarin in the leaves was before flowering, right? During flowering, the constituents are pulled upward in the flowers, and when the seeds develop, then a large proportion of the silymarin ends up in the seeds. So if we're going to use the leaves, we need to harvest before flowering. Now, in terms of concentration, when the leaves were harvested before flowering, they contain about 1/5 of the silymarin content of the seeds per unit of weight. It might not seem that much, but that's actually really good because you can harvest a lot more leaves per plant. Now careful, the leaves are spiky too. The researchers calculated the yield per cultivated surface, and on a surface of 4,000 meters squared, they obtained almost 14 kilos of silymarin from the seeds and 23 kilos of silymarin from the leaves. So 65% more silymarin from the leaves, simply because there's a much greater leaf production compared to the seeds, right? So what do we do with that information? Well, personally, I'd like to experiment with using the leaves. Now you have to know a bit of chemistry around constituents. Silymarin is not very water soluble. So a tea of the leaves, what we call in French an infusion of the leaves, probably won't extract much of it. It's much better to make a tincture of the leaves and let the alcohol do its work. Or you could eat the young and tender leaves after carefully removing the spines all around. You can do that with a pair of scissors. I would not cook the young leaves because we know that heat damages silymarin, and forget about the older leaves because they're way too tough and spiky to try to eat them. What about tincturing the leaves? Well, this study tells us that they contain 1/5 of the active constituents of the seeds, so that would make a tincture that is a lot less concentrated than that of the seeds. Would the tincture be effective? Would we need to multiply the dosage by 5, which would represent a lot of alcohol? And let's keep in mind that the benefits of the plant is for an inflamed liver, and here alcohol should be minimized. Could we evaporate some of the alcohol without heating the preparation too, right? And conserve those flavolignates while the alcohol evaporates? That I don't know, right? To be investigated. So in any case, that's exactly the kind of study that I find super exciting because it opens new doors, right? Well, so granted, what excites us herbal geeks is a bit unusual. And if you're having a night out with friends, it's probably better to discuss the latest season of Stranger Things than milk thistle leaves, unless you want to experience a long moment of awkward silence. And yes, I do speak from experience. Okay, my second study is about sumac and its usefulness in NAFLD. NAFLD is non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. Right? This is a condition we practitioners see more and more often in the context of metabolic syndrome, which is insulin resistance with hyperinsulinemia. It's a bit complicated to describe the problem here. Hopefully you're familiar with it. If not, there will probably be a future episode dedicated to this situation, metabolic syndrome. Now, fatty liver disease is a serious condition. And it's called fatty liver because there's buildup of fat that is packed inside the liver. And that creates inflammation. And that can progress to fibrosis, meaning that the functional tissues of the liver is literally replaced by scar tissue. And this can evolve toward cirrhosis and sometimes liver cancer. So the goal is obviously to work on as many levers as we can to slow down the progression. And that means first and foremost addressing lack of physical activity, a bad diet, bad sleep hygiene, nutritional deficiencies, and much further down in the list of priorities, herbal remedies. And yes, I am a devoted herbalist. If I say this, it tells you a lot about the strength of the evidence in favor of movement, good food, and good sleep. That being said, if we wanted to use plants, which plants for NAFLD? Well, today we're talking about sumac, thanks to an Iranian study from 2020. You probably know sumac, you've probably seen it. It's a shrub, sometimes a small tree, and the sour, tiny red fruits are used as a spice in the traditional cuisine of certain countries. You can find powdered sumac pretty easily in spice shops. And if you have the tree around you, even better, you could powder it using a coffee grinder. Now, in the study, 84 patients with NAFLD were enrolled. The study was randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled. The patients received either 2 grams of powdered sumac fruit per day, which is not a lot when you think about it, maybe a small teaspoon, or placebo for 12 weeks. And they were also given dietary guidelines with a 500 calorie deficit compared to their estimated needs. So they had to eat a lot less than usual, and recommendation to get 55 to 65% of their calories from carbohydrates. Now, that percentage of carbs is not a good idea, in my opinion, in the context of metabolic syndrome, but hey, that's how they designed the study. The researchers also gave recommendation for moderate physical exercise. And keep in mind that these were just suggestions, right? The participants could follow the suggestions or not and simply report back to the researchers. And truly controlled diet and exercise studies, which are performed in what we call metabolic wards, are very costly. So we don't see them very often in the context of herbal studies. And collecting data from the memory of the participants, what they did a few days ago is, as we know, very inaccurate. But that bias applies to both groups, right? Control and placebo. So we're going to assume that it kind of cancels out. I know it's a big assumption, especially since it's a small sample of participants, but we're going to make that assumption. Okay, that being said, after 12 weeks compared to the placebo group, the sumac group showed a reduction in liver fibrosis, right? So reduction in fibrosis, decrease in liver inflammation markers, lower blood insulin, lower hemoglobin A1C, lower high sensitivity C-reactive protein, so less systemic inflammation in the body. The placebo group also showed improvement because they were in a caloric deficit and they were exercising, but the improvements in the sumac group were much more impressive and statistically significant. Just to give you an example, if we look at the fibrosis score, which is really important here, in the placebo group, fibrosis decreased by 7.7%, and in the sumac group, it decreased by 22%, right? So that's a clear and meaningful difference. What I really like about sumac is that, as I said, powdered sumac fruit is very easy to find in spice shops. And just like cinnamon, which is also helpful in the context of a metabolic syndrome, it can be used to season what we eat, right? Sumac gives us a second spice, which may actually be even more interesting than cinnamon. That I don't know. And also can be integrated directly into the food. And note that regarding cinnamon, it's much better to use true cinnamon, which is Cinnamomum verum, than Chinese cinnamon, which is Cinnamomum cassia. And I will explain why in the future. For reference, the sumac used in the study was Rhus coriaria, Tanner's sumac, which grows in Southern Europe and Western Asia. Other types of sumacs probably have the same properties. Also, I cannot be sure of that statement. Well, that's it for the first episode of the Herbal Applied Research News series, or HARN. Did you like it? Did you find it useful? Should I keep going and do a lot more of this? Please do let me know. Thanks for being here. See you soon for a new episode of The French Herbal.